Blood asks for trust, not questions, but blind trust can kill. I thought my brother needed me, but he was playing me. Every penny I sent, every call I made, it was all a lie. The house, the memories, the family trust, everything was a stage. And then I found the truth buried in the basement, and my world broke. My name is Ethan. I live in New York, a city where you can be surrounded by people and still feel alone. From the outside, my life probably looked successful. A good job, a decent salary, a clear path toward the future. But in the middle of all that, there was one responsibility I never forgot. My younger brother, Caleb. After our parents passed away, he stayed alone in our old farmhouse, the same house my father built with the earnings of his youth, the same land where my mother worked for years to make things grow. I moved to the city, but my conscience stayed behind. Every month, I sent money regularly. I never kept track of how much I sent, when I sent it, or why. For me, it wasn't a transaction, it was a duty. On the phone, Caleb always said the same thing. Times were hard, expenses were high, the business still wasn't stable. I never questioned him. I believed questions were a sign of doubt, and doubt poisons a brother's bond. Looking back now, I understand something clearly. Blind trust is also a crime. Its punishment just arrives late. 7 years passed like this. I kept moving forward in New York, and that farmhouse became frozen in my mind, a place untouched by time, where everything was exactly how I left it. Then one day, without any clear reason, I felt uneasy. No phone call came, no argument happened, just a feeling that I needed to go back. I booked a flight. I told myself it was just a visit, a few days, then I'd return to my life. I didn't know I wasn't running from my life. I was walking straight toward its most dangerous track. When I got close to the farmhouse, the very first sight sent a cold wave through my chest. The house I'd preserved in my mind for years was falling apart in real life. Damp stains on the walls, cracks in the wooden door, overgrown weeds in the yard. I didn't feel anger, I felt shame, like I had failed a promise. But in that same moment, my eyes landed on the car parked in front of the house, and that shame instantly turned into a question. The car was new, expensive, completely out of place. The first clear thought hit me hard. If things were really that bad, how did this car end up here? The door opened and Caleb stepped outside. He was smiling, but that smile made me uneasy. He looked confident, too confident, like someone who had already prepared for an exam. He hugged me, but the warmth I expected wasn't there. For the first time, I realized something had changed between us. Not just distance, time had changed more than I thought. The boy I kept sending money to, the one I believed was struggling, was now standing in front of me as a man with too much confidence in himself. Then, at that exact moment, a woman's voice came from inside the house. Sarah. She hadn't fully stepped into view yet, but her presence changed the air. I don't know why, but my instincts rang an alarm immediately. That was the moment this stopped being just a story about brothers. It turned into a game, a serious one, a game whose rules I didn't know, but the other players had been preparing for years. When Sarah finally stepped out through the kitchen door, I immediately understood that the problem wasn't just Caleb. She didn't look like an ordinary woman, and she definitely didn't fit the simple, domestic image I expected in a place like this. Her clothes were expensive, her body language was confident, but the most dangerous thing was the coldness in her eyes. That kind of cold only exists in people who believe they are in control of the situation. She looked me up and down, slowly, like she was weighing something, evaluating it, deciding whether it was useful to her or not. She didn't bother to smile. She just nodded her head, the kind of nod you give when someone's presence is unavoidable, but not welcome. The moment we sat down at the dinner table, I realized I wasn't sitting with a family. I had walked into a pre-written script. Caleb was talking, but his eyes kept drifting toward Sarah again and again, as if he was silently asking for her approval.
He talked about business, about future plans, and he spoke with such confidence that if I didn't already sense something was wrong, I might have believed him. But the problem was simple. There wasn't a single piece of evidence in that house to support the success he was describing. The furniture was old, the walls were damaged, even the plates on the table looked mismatched, collected from different places over time. That was the moment the first clear contradiction formed inside me. I felt it. Something was being deliberately hidden from me. I casually asked why, if things had improved so much, the house hadn't been repaired. My question was simple. There was no accusation in my tone. But Sarah answered immediately, as if she had been waiting for that exact question. She said investing money in houses like this was pointless, that it was better to make smart moves. In that one sentence, the mindset that would later destroy everything was already exposed. Caleb instantly agreed with her, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. He wasn't sharing his own opinion. He was just repeating hers.
As night grew deeper, the silence of the house began to cut into me. The kind of silence that usually means safety had turned into a warning here. I was lying in my old room, the same room where my brother and I used to fight as kids. But now, even this room felt unfamiliar. The old marks on the walls felt like they were staring at me, and with every breath, the feeling grew stronger. I wasn't a guest here. Staring at the ceiling, I replayed the last 7 years in my mind. All the money transfers, all the phone calls, all the times I heard the same sentence, "It's just a tough time right now." For the first time, I realized that maybe the tough time wasn't mine. Maybe it was turning into capital for someone else. Around midnight, I heard voices from downstairs. They weren't loud. They were whispers, deliberately quiet, careful. I opened my door slightly and looked toward the stairs. The light was on downstairs, and I could clearly hear Sarah's voice. She wasn't angry. She was speaking like someone planning, like someone reminding another person what to say and what not to say. Caleb's voice was low, defensive, and in that single moment it became clear to me who really had control. I didn't try to listen to everything, because I already knew the more I heard, the harder it would be to turn back. The next morning, I deliberately acted normal. I didn't ask questions at breakfast. I didn't point out any contradictions. Sarah looked at me with surprise, like she was expecting a reaction, and when it didn't come, I saw a brief flash of caution in her eyes. That was the moment I became certain. This wasn't just a game about money. It was a game about power, and without realizing it, I had stepped directly into its path. That same day, I decided I wouldn't stay here with emotions. I would stay with my eyes open. I thought about the basement, the place where my father used to keep his things, the place where he hid what mattered. I didn't know what I would find down there, but I knew one thing for sure. The truth is always buried underground, and if I was going to understand this game, that was where it had to begin. It was late at night. The only sound in the house was the echo of my footsteps. Without turning on the light, I opened the basement door. That old door, closed for years, as if it had been built to hide something. With every step, the wood groaned and my heartbeat grew louder. I didn't know what I was about to find, but one thing was certain. This was the moment I would face every hidden truth. As soon as I stepped into the basement, I saw old trunks and piles of clothes, but on top of everything, there was a folder. My father's name was written on it in his own handwriting, along with a date. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I opened the folder and looked at the documents. My mind reeled. The house ownership, which had always been in my parents' name, had now been transferred to Caleb with forged signatures. Every page was proof of a new deception. Every line was a question I had never asked for years. I sat down on the floor, and the files echoed through my life like a shockwave. Suddenly, I realized something terrifying. Everything I had believed for the past 7 years was nothing but a mask. Every thank you from Caleb, every smile, every word, all of it had been planned. And Sarah, who I thought was a silent witness to my worry, was actually the mastermind of the game. Everything became clear at once. The condition of the house, the expensive car, Caleb's unstable behavior, Sarah's cold eyes. It all connected. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a calculated plan. For the first time, I felt real fear. But along with it, I felt a strange intensity. I knew thinking alone wouldn't change anything anymore. I had to move. I closed the folder, went upstairs, and tried to calm my mind. I made a plan for the next day. I decided I wouldn't confront this simply. I would confront it legally. That was the moment Ethan realized something for the first time. Blood may truly be thicker than water, but that same blood, once a symbol of trust, can also become the source of betrayal.
When dinner time came, I immediately knew this wasn't an ordinary meal. The lights in the room were deliberately dim, the kind of lighting where you can see everything, but nothing clearly. Caleb sat across from me, smiling, but that smile no longer carried the innocence I remembered from childhood. It was the kind of smile you see on people who believe the game is already in their hands. Sarah was completely silent. She wasn't eating, she wasn't speaking. She was just watching me, like someone reading a case file. I could feel her eyes measuring every breath I took, every movement, every second. I didn't speak while eating. I took my time on purpose, as if I was preparing myself for the moment. Then, slowly, I placed the folder on the table, not forcefully, not in anger, just loud enough for everyone's attention to snap toward it. The moment the folder touched the table, Caleb's body stiffened. For a split second, his eyes widened, like his brain had recognized danger, but he quickly recovered. "What's this?" he asked with a laugh. But that confidence was gone. That laugh was just a thin curtain, trying to hide panic. Before I could speak, Sarah did. This time, not as a threat, but with complete calm, like she already knew how this would go. "Do you really think you can come here and change anything?" she said. Her voice was soft, but there was coldness beneath it. "This house, these documents, all of this was settled a long time ago. Sometimes proving the truth is just as hard as creating a lie." She glanced at the folder, then locked eyes with me. "And sometimes," she said, "the person who asks too many questions becomes the problem." That was the moment I understood something clearly. This woman wasn't playing with police. She wasn't playing with noise or chaos. She was playing with fear. Caleb quickly tried to take control of the conversation. His voice now carried hesitation, but also the familiar tone of accusation. "You left us, Ethan," he said. "You weren't here when everything was falling apart. You were building your life in New York, while we were just trying to survive." He emphasized the word survive, as if to show he wanted to sound like a victim, not the guilty one. For the first time, I looked carefully at the entire table. The plates, the glasses, the cutlery, everything was in place, but the atmosphere felt familiar, like the room before a courtroom hearing. This wasn't a place where truth spoke, power did. I took a deep breath and said calmly, "This isn't about leaving or staying. The only issue is this: what you both believe is the truth doesn't stand as truth on paper, and in the end, paper is what decides." At those words, something appeared on Sarah's face for the first time: caution. Caleb opened his mouth to speak, then stopped. I closed the folder, pushed my chair back, and stood up. I didn't accuse, I didn't threaten, because I knew the real fight wasn't here. This table was only the beginning. The real battle would happen where words don't matter, only evidence does. As I walked out of the room, I knew I wasn't turning my back. I was changing the battlefield. That night, I made a decision. This would no longer stay between brothers. It would go to a courtroom where Sarah's silent manipulation and Caleb's emotional accusations would both carry no weight. I knew the game was no longer under their control, and that was the moment this story truly became dangerous. When I returned to New York, there was a strange fear inside me. I thought I had already seen the most dangerous truth. The basement documents, the audio recording, the forged signatures. I believed the real game ended there, but I was wrong. The real game was only beginning. The lawyer's office was silent, the kind of silence that only comes right before major destruction. I placed the folder in front of him. He went through each paper, taking notes, opening files on his computer. For a long time, he didn't say a word. Then he took a deep breath and said the sentence that pulled the ground out from under my feet. "Ethan, you think the problem is limited to the house, but the truth is far more dangerous than that." I sat up straight. "How bad?" I asked. He turned the file and said, "Your parents' farmhouse wasn't just mortgaged, it's gone." A ringing started in my ears. He didn't stop. First loan, $420,000 from the bank in the farmhouse's name. Second loan, $180,000, using part of the land as collateral. That land now belongs to the bank. Third loan, $95,000 from a private finance company against the remaining assets. And the fourth, he paused for a moment, $610,000, a full mortgage on the house. The numbers started spinning in front of me. These weren't loans. They were graves, stacked one on top of another.
I said in disbelief, This isn't possible. I sent money every month to save the house." The lawyer looked me straight in the eyes and said quietly, "That money was never used to save the house, Ethan. That money became fuel for the game." I was completely shaken. My parents' home, the land, the memories, all of it had been buried in paperwork, and I didn't even know. "Caleb and Sarah didn't do this in one day," the lawyer said. "This was a long-term plan, forged signatures, fake permissions, and your silence. Everything worked in their favor." I leaned back in my chair. My hands were shaking. "So now, what's left?" I asked, barely able to speak. The lawyer answered directly, "The truth, and it's the only thing left that can bury all of this." In that moment, I realized this wasn't just a story of betrayal. This was financial murder, and I was about to be the next victim. A new chapter had opened here, darker, more dangerous, and now there was no way back. The lawyer stayed silent for a long time, as if the weight of the moment was heavy even for him. I thought I had already heard the worst, but the moment he opened his laptop display, the shock hit me so hard it felt like my world flipped upside down. An image appeared on the screen. Wide land, expensive lighting, a luxury swimming pool, 2 high-end cars in the parking area. It looked like a movie set. I froze. My breathing stopped, and only one question escaped my lips. "What is this?"
The lawyer looked at me. There was a seriousness in his eyes. It told me this wasn't a game. This was a full-scale financial fraud. He spoke slowly. "Ethan, this is the farmhouse where your brother was actually living. The life you thought he was struggling through was an act, a role, a cover, so you would keep sending money every month, and no one would suspect a thing." He paused. The real life, the real fun, the real freedom. It was all here. It felt like lightning struck my brain. I didn't say a word. My eyes stayed open. My heart started pounding. The lawyer opened a file. He laid out the debt records one by one. $420,000 withdrawn from the bank, $180,000 raised against land, $95,000 from a private finance company, and a full home mortgage of $610,000. He looked up at me. All of it was spent within a single month. Every dollar poured into this property, the same place where he was throwing parties, gathering friends, living freely, as if your worry was just part of a script. I froze. My mind and heart shut down at the same time. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a long-term plan, a financial and emotional scam, years in the making, one that proved every feeling I trusted was a lie. Images started flashing in my head. Parties in full swing, Sarah laughing, a glass in her hand, Caleb greeting guests with a smile. It all looked like this world belonged to him, and I was nothing more than a spectator. I was completely shaken. I asked quietly, "So, the house, the one he was living in?" The lawyer nodded. His voice was calm. "It was just a cover, Ethan. The real game was happening behind the curtain. Your brother, the one you trusted, the one you worked yourself to the bone for, he was deceiving you every step of the way." He leaned back. "And now, all of this is part of a financial and emotional web you never even knew you were inside." In that moment, I felt it. My world didn't just change. It felt like a heavy stone was placed on my mind. I realized something terrifying. I never truly knew my brother. I only knew the character he created for me. And that character, that act, was finally exposed. A new chapter had begun, darker, more dangerous, and filled with even deeper betrayal. And I knew one thing for sure. The curtain had fallen. The lawyer closed the file and looked at me. There was the same seriousness in his eyes, the same heavy confidence, the kind that says nothing can protect the past anymore. No lies, no hidden debts, no deception. And I understood something clearly. Everything I had found in the basement, every forged signature, every bank record, every hidden audio recording, every financial maneuver, it was all exposed now, open in front of the court. From this point on, no step, no move, no action was working in anyone's favor anymore. The court delivered its verdict. The farmhouse was to be seized immediately. Its sale would be used to repay the bank loans. All private loans were to be cleared. My parents' house and land were declared free of all liabilities, and under full legal record, every property that had once been transferred through fraud and forged signatures was now to be fully and cleanly transferred into Ethan's name. Caleb and Sarah stood there in silence. Fear and shock flickered in their eyes. The same people who once dared to betray their own brother now looked completely powerless in front of every legal document, every amount of money, and every revealed truth. It felt like a single moment where years of deception, every lie, and every financial trick came crashing down on them, all at once. The farmhouse had been sold. Every loan taken on the property was cleared. My parents' house and land were free from all burdens, and on every legal document, my name was officially recorded. Everything was transparent, clear, undeniable. I stepped outside quietly and felt the air, a calm that wasn't the thrill of victory or the satisfaction of revenge. It was the calm that comes only from justice. Late, perhaps, but inevitable. I whispered to myself, sometimes you don't need to fight or make noise. Just place everything in front of law and truth. Every lie will fall under its own weight, and the truth always wins in the end. In that moment, I knew the game was over. The farmhouse was mine. The debts were paid. The land and house were free. And the deception that once hung over blood ties remained only as a lesson that truth, justice, and accountability always find their way.